All right. Um, so welcome all parents of JBQ quizzers, Sheba, Radha, of course, Glassy is our coach, and Justin and Priscilla. So, so what we wanted to do was from this year, as you know, we need a lot of parent support and help in volunteering as officials. So we thought it'll be good to go over some of the important things when you volunteer, because I know it's scary, right? Without knowing anything, if you have to volunteer, I know it's kind of hard for the parents. So we thought if we go over some of the important things that parents have to know, like when you volunteer as an official, I thought that will be helpful for all the parents. So that's the reason why we thought we could do like a small training session. So I have some slides which I will email it to you too after the session, but this will kind of help you to focus on, let's say, for example, if you're volunteering as a judge, what are you supposed to know, and uh, what is your kind of role when you are a judge in a meet. And then I have some of the points for the scorekeeper. So let's say you're keeping score for the team. What do you have to be mindful of, or what are things that you have to focus on when you do scorekeeping? So I have this cheat sheet, which I'll, of course, email you, but let me go through the slides. So you all are familiar, most of you are familiar. We have, your kids have been quizzing for a while, so you know about JBQ. So JBQ is nothing but teaching God's word, helping the kids to learn, not only learn, memorize, but also hide God's word in their hearts so that they can live according to God's word, as they keep growing and learning. So that's JBQ. And we have around 576 questions in JBQ. So there's like 10-point questions, 20-point questions, 30-point questions. So you all are familiar with that, so I don't have to go much into that. And as you're aware, there are two divisions. There's a primary division, there is a junior division. So primary division is from kindergarten through third grade, and they only focus on the 10-point questions. So most of you are, aware of that too. And we have a junior team. So the junior team consists of like from fourth to sixth grade, and they study all the questions, all the 10 points, 20 points, and 30-point questions. So, and then something that I wanted to reiterate, I know Glossy and Alex have sent out this to all of the parents. So I want to just kind of, reiterate. So please help us out, as parents. We need a lot of help as volunteers in every meet. And if you have gone to a match, you know what's involved. It's totally run by volunteers. So if you can help us out, something that we have not forcing parents, but we would be, it would be really helpful if parents can at least volunteer, um, at least in one match. If you can help us out with that, so that way coaches, they don't have to worry about, because every time we take a team in the district, we have to like for each team we have to provide at least two volunteers, two officials, apart from the coach and assistant coach, all that. Apart from that, we have to take at least two officials. It could be a judge, it could be a quiz master, it could be a scorekeeper. So if we take two teams, then we have to provide the league coordinator with at least four officials. So based on how many teams we send out for a match, we have to, per team, we have to send out like two officials. So that's why we are requesting all the parents, if you can please help us out. And it's a good way for parents also to be a part and see what kids are doing, because it gives a great moral support to the children, your own kids, when you come and watch and cheer them and see what's involved in this whole program. It's really good. So that's that. And so this is a basic structure when you attend a match, and some of you and most of you have probably seen a match. So you have like two teams. You have like four quizzers in each team. Let's say from our church, we have a team that's participating. Then you have a coach, right? And then, so for that team, we need to provide a scorekeeper and a judge. And we also have to provide a quiz master, but I'm not going to go into that yet, because once we work on this scorekeeper and judging slowly, hopefully we can raise some quiz masters too in the future. But for now, we'll just focus on scorekeeping and judging, and then we'll worry about quiz master later on. But so for each team, there'll be a scorekeeper and a judge, and from each of the teams. So if you have 2 teams, you'll have and thankfully, the leagues are very, they're not strict on it. They work with, if you have one scorekeeper from a church, then the other, they prefer to have 2 judges and then 1 scorekeeper. If they have 2, it'll be really nice for them, but they can kind of manage with 1 scorekeeper. And then if you have 2 judges from both of the teams, that's really helpful. So this is kind of a basic structure for, and you all know. So I just want to go over some of the, let's say, for example, you are volunteering or officiating as a judge. So what things should you be looking out for, or how do you do that, right? So some of the things, judging is overall much easier than scorekeeping. They will give you let's say you're in a match and then you have 20 questions, right, per round. So they'll give you the list of all the 20 questions along with answers. So the quiz master will give you a set of printouts with all of the questions along with the answers. So as a judge, your role is to just watch out when the kids or the quizzers, from either of the teams, when the quizzer is answering a certain question, you just have to kind of go follow along with them, just to make sure if they're answering it correctly or if they did miss anything out, and so forth. Okay, because the quiz master, so you will have 2 judges. Let's say you have 2 judges, and then you'll have the quiz master. The quiz master will also be following along, and the quiz master is more responsible person to kind of say if it's correct or not. But then at times, if the quiz master, let's say, is doubtful, or if he missed out some of the words that the quizzer said, then the quiz master will look at both of the judges to get a confirmation. Maybe the quiz master didn't hear, but the judge probably the quizzer answered it correctly, and the quiz master did not hear it, but the judge heard it. So there are instances sometimes, it can happen. So though the quiz master will give the final result, whether it's a pass, whether he got the points or not, the quizzer, but at the same point, judge also is very important, just to kind of stay along what the quizzer is answering, and then just keep an eye on the answers. And then let's say if quiz master did not pinpoint certain things and the quizzer was wrong, then judge has the responsibility to call for a timeout and point it out to the quiz master. Okay, so judging is much more simpler, just that you have to be mindful of certain rules, but you will have the answers, so you don't have to come up with the answers. And you'll have, after every question, the answer will be given to you. So you'll just kind of, it's like correction, like a teacher. So you just look at the quizzer and then make sure they're answering correctly. If they're missing something, or if they're misquoting something, you just have to look at that. So, so when you are judging, some of the things that you have to kind of think about or pay attention is when it contains all the so basically, when a quiz master asks a question and the quizzer is answering, so just make sure, follow along the answer. Just make sure that whatever the material is given to you, the answer that the quizzer is answering matches with what you have on your printout. Okay, so that's the first thing. And then another thing is sometimes kids, I don't know if you who have done judging before, if you have come across that scenario, but sometimes kids don't give the exact answer that's in the book. So these are for non-quotation questions. For quotations, they have to be word perfect, so they cannot change the words and all that. But for a non-quotation question, sometimes they will answer it, but then they might change some of the wordings. So for those kind of questions, you just have to look at the essence. Have they given you the right scope of the answer? So I put some examples just to kind of give you an idea. So let's say there is a 10-point question. The question is, in what language was most of the Old Testament written? And if a child answers Hebrews instead of Hebrew, the answer is still correct because it's the language. So they still gave you the language, just that they're saying like it's written in Hebrews, because when you answer, sometimes you answer in plural. So as long as they have answered, in essence, the correct answer for a question, you can still mark it as correct. Okay, and then I put one more example just to kind of give you an idea. So let's say there's a question called, whom does the Holy Spirit glorify? If the child answers by saying Christ instead of Jesus, because in the book or the printout that you have for this question, the answer is Jesus. But if the kids answer Christ, they are still marked correct, because in essence, Jesus Christ is, he's the same, right? So for these kind of essence questions, as long as the kids answer in essence and give you the answer in essence, you will still mark them as correct. Okay.
So for that example, the last example you gave, instead if they say God, it will be correct, right? Even though Jesus is God.
Right. God also can be correct. Yeah.
It can be, okay.
Yeah. But then there are scenarios where the other team can contest, and they can come up with a whole theology like God, like in the sense, doesn't mean that it's Jesus Christ. Teams can come up. But if you mark it like correct, let's say as a judge, you mark it correct. And then let's say if the quiz master also kind of goes with it and says like the quizzer answered it correctly, and the other team can always compete. And then let's say their argument is like very convincing. So then what happens is the quiz master will again get along with the judges, and then they will re-evaluate the answer. And let's say if one of the judges is convinced with that answer for the team, then the quiz master has to go with whatever like the ruling will be, because there have been instances that happen.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. And then the next thing that for a judge is when the answer portion to a quotation question is given word for word without adding, deleting, changing, or repeating any word contained in your printout, in your answer sheet. The reference must also be given on quotation questions. If interrupted, the completion of the question portion may be given in essence. So here what it says is like when, let's say it's a quotation question. So quotation question always has to be word perfect. And now that we are using NLT version, so, and then you will have all that in your question, like in your printouts, they will give you the exact quotation. So everything has to match for quotation questions. They can't even add like extra letter to it. Let's say a lot of kids, have done this where they will give you the entire quotation correctly, but in the end, let's say there is like a word or something, they will just say words. They have given everything correctly, but just that extra letter can nullify the whole thing, because for quotations, they're very strict on quotations. It has to be word perfect. You cannot add a word, you cannot delete a word. It has to be exactly. Whereas for non-quotations, like we have looked at, if the kids give you an answer in essence, you're still correct. But for quotations, it has to be word perfect. Okay. And for quotations, of course, they have to give us a reference, right? From where is the quotation from? So the reference can be given either or before. Like they don't have to like start off with like Matthew 2:13 and then quote it. They can quote the verse and then give you the reference, as long as that's in their 30 seconds time limit. So either if they do it before or after, that's not a problem. Okay. And then the other thing is repeating a word in the reference portion or question portion is permissible, which means like for the answers, they have to be word perfect. They cannot add any words. But in the reference portion, like when they're, let's say they're saying like in the book of Matthew 2:12, that's not wrong, because they have given you the right reference, just that they're adding additional words, which Some kids tend to do that just by their habit. So that's not wrong. Okay. And even when they are let's say they interrupted the question, like a quotation question, and if they add something, as long as they have given us the entire question and then added few words, which are, that also is not wrong. Okay. I know it's a little confusing here, but any questions?
I think I'm ready to be a judge.
Yes, 100%. Judge, yeah, absolutely. Okay, so, and the next one is when the judges rule that the quizer's completion of an interrupted question, including quotation questions, is the same basic question, though in different words. Quizer's completion of an interrupted question, including quotation questions, is the same basic question, though in different words. So, so as long as they, let's say they interrupted a question, but then they gave you the gist of it, like the question, what it meant. So as long as they have given that, both for quotations and non-quotations, and if they explained it like in a different wordings, still they are correct. As long as they didn't lose the actual, like the actual question itself. And most of the quizzers know, I mean, they try to follow the book. So it's very rare that you would run into this scenario because a lot of them follow the book to the dot. That's how they learn. So very rarely they will kind of mix up and change the whole question and then explain it in their own words. But as long as they have given you the essence when they interrupt, that's still correct. Okay. Next one is when a mispronunciation of any word is still clearly recognizable as a word's required for either a non-quotation or a quotation response. This is something that a lot of kids do, the way they pronounce words, right? One of the hardest words is like who lived longer and how long did he live? Methuselah, right? So that is like a tongue twister for the kids. So as long as they have given you the way they pronounce it, probably some of the kids pronounce it differently, but as long as they have given you that name, even though if they pronounce it in a different way, they're still correct. Okay. There are some words like that, which are like a tongue twister. So that's that. And then the fifth one is once all correct information called for in a response is completely given, any additional erroneous information is disregarded for both quotation and non-quotation responses. So this is like, let's say, let me pull a question. Let's say, what did Esau sell to Jacob, right? So the answer is his birthright. So that's the answer. So not a lot of kids, but some kids, what they do is like, they will give you the answer, his birthright, and then they will add something because or whatever, right? So as long as initially if they have given you the right information first, and then if they add something later on to that answer, we can ignore the later part, because as long as they have given the right information the first time, they are marked correct. So let's say in this question, like the kid says, the quizzer says his birthright, and then he'll talk about like, and Esau something, he'll give you something else. So as long as he has given you the right answer first, he's marked correct, and then we can ignore the rest of the things that are like not necessary. And this is applicable for both quotation and non-quotation.
So it's not applicable to quotation question when they give the correct answer, but in between the right answer, they add a word, then that's wrong, correct?
Right, correct. Yeah.
It has to be either before or after.
After, yeah. Let's say they have quoted everything, right? And then if they said something after that, then that's fine.
Okay.
So after giving the right information, if they do add something which is like not part of the answer, it could be relevant, but not exactly like what's in the material. They're still that can be ignored as long as they have given the right information. Okay. And then I have a few more for judging. Any questions so far? Following through? Is everybody following through?
No. Yes, ma'am. Yeah.
All right, so that's how do you mark answer correct. So then there are scenarios where why is an answer or the quizzer's response incorrect? Okay, so one of the conditions is when the quizzer fails to accurately give the correct information before the calling off time. So once this scenario comes into picture where let's say the quiz master asks a question and the quizzer buzzes it, and he has 30 seconds to answer, right? And then let's say he've given you like a lot of wrong information, and before the quiz master or the timekeeper calls time, like before his time is up, if he did not give any correct information for that particular question, he should be marked wrong. Basically, he did not answer the question before the time. He might have sometimes, like kids kind of forget, right? There's a question, there's like, huge sentence. They can give you like half of the sentence, and then they will try to add other words. And then the time is up. So they haven't given you like the whole response for the question. And in that scenario, you will still mark that question wrong because they haven't given you the whole information for that question. Okay. Any questions here?
So for that, we have to give a -5, right?
So this is, you're still a judge. That's a scorekeeper. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
So will based on the point value of the question, yeah, they will mark it wrong.
Okay.
And the next one is when incorrect information is given in either the question or answer portion before the response is completed, quotation or non-quotation. This happens quite a bit where the quizzer buzzes in, right? And let's say the question is, why was it wrong for Lot to live in Sodom, right? Let's say this was a question. And the quizzer, sometimes they get confused, right, with other question, and they might probably give you start giving you the wrong answer. Let's say that was a question, but then he will say Abraham was 100, and then suddenly he realizes, oh, I've made it, like this is not the right answer. So the quizzer has already given you the wrong information, then he will correct himself, and then give you the right answer. So in that scenario, because the first information that the quizzer gave you is incorrect, though he corrected himself later on, we still mark that as wrong.
Oh. Okay. So the first hand answer, irrespective, has to be correct.
Correct, yeah.
Wow.
So they can give you the correct and then add something which is completely ignored. But then if you give something wrong, start off giving wrong information, and then you correct yourself and then start giving the right information, but that's still counted as wrong.
Okay.
And this is applicable for both quotation and non-quotation questions. Okay. The next one, when any word or portion of a word is omitted, repeated, added, or changed except for mispronunciation while quoting the verse portion to a quotation question. So this is particularly for a quotation question. So you cannot, so they're more stricter on the quotations when you give the verse. You cannot omit anything, you cannot repeat. Let's say I'm doing like the Lord's Prayer. So I cannot say, repeat it. Like I say, our Lord and Father in heaven, hallowed be your name. And then I cannot go back and then say, hallowed be your name. So you cannot repeat, you cannot add anything like your own words. You cannot even add an alphabet to the verse, or you cannot change it. It has to be like word perfect as it's written in the Bible. So even if you add like one letter, I mean, there are scenarios, I mean, you feel so bad. Kids, I mean, some are like the 30 pointers are like huge, right? They give you everything correct. Just in the end, like they will add some plural to something, and then we have to mark them wrong, which is like, oh, but then that's the rule. So you can't even add like a alphabet to the to the quotation. You will be marked wrong, sadly.
I think it's like Jesus said, no one can add even one letter.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. That's why probably. Yeah. Okay, so that's that for quotation question. And the next one is when mispronunciation or failure to speak loudly or clearly makes it impossible to recognize the words required for that response. So this happens sometimes, like some of the quizzers like don't speak up loud or they're not clear. Initially in the practice matches, quiz masters are a little bit lenient. They sometimes if they don't hear, they'll ask the judges, like if they heard the answer, and then they will consult the judges and give them points. But then when you go into district finals or semifinals, regionals, they're more stricter on that. So you have to be like loud and clear. The quizzer actually has to be loud and clear. And then if the judge doesn't hear a response, then sadly you have to mark them wrong. So if they're not loud enough and you couldn't hear the response from the quizzer, you'll have to mark them like wrong. Okay. And the next one, when the quizzer fails to complete an interrupted question portion in essence before giving the answer portion to any question. So this scenario will come, let's say the quizzer interrupts the question, which means the quizzer has to finish the whole question, right? They cannot interrupt and then just straightly go into the answer. Because though there are cases where kids do that, they will interrupt, but then just like they want to answer, so they forget to finish the question and they will just give you the answer. Though they have given the right answer, you'll still have to mark them wrong because they did not finish the question, because they interrupted the question. So which means they will have to finish the question, give you at least the essence of the question, and then give the answer. So if they don't finish the question, and even though they give you the right answer, it will still be marked as wrong. Okay, so that's that. And the next one is when the judges rule that a quizzer's own coach or team member gave the quizzer obvious help. So this, quizzers know, these are the rules where you're not supposed to help each other, though you're in the same team. You're not supposed to help. So if a judge sees, like if you, see the quizzer is like kind of helping or doing something, so you'll have to mark them wrong. Okay. And the last one is when a quotation answer portion contains words that are not in the Bible fact pack answer. So this is related to quotation, right? So this is, so now that we have NLT version, right? So they'll have to give you the NLT version of the quotation. So if they add words that are not part of the quotation and that are not part of what the answer that you were given, then you will still mark it as wrong for quotations. Just that you cannot add anything to the quotations. So it's similar rule. Okay, so that's the judging portion of it. So before I move on to there are a few more, and some are repetitive, but let me go through this. Some other rules. So we have like what to answer and like what to correct, and then what are incorrect. And then there are some other couple of rules where the Bible fact is nothing but the material that we use that has words or phrases of similar meaning separated by the conjunction or require only one of those words or phrases to be ruled correct. So what do we do? How do you rule correct, or whether the quizzer is correct or wrong? So one example is, you probably find a lot of these questions in 10-pointers too, where they give you either this or that. So for those type of questions, as long as the quizzer has given you like one answer, you will still mark them as correct because it's either or. So let's say there's an example here. This is a 10-point question. What is symbolized or pictured by water baptism? So the answer in the book is he was crucified or nailed to a cross. So there are two answers to this question. He was crucified or nailed to a cross. So let's say the quizzer only says nailed to a cross. Because it's an either or, you can still mark them as correct because they have given you like one of the answers for the question. Okay, some quizzers give you both, some quizzers might give you just one. So in these type of questions, they're still, you can mark them correct as long as they've given you like one of the answers. Okay. And the next one is or answer portions that include the conjunction and require all words or phrases joined by the conjunction to give you for correct ruling. So if it's or in the answers, if they give you one answer, they're correct. But if the answer has and, then they have to give you both. Okay, I can give you an example. Let's say the question is, how old were Abraham and Sarah when Isaac was born? So the answer is Abraham was 100 and Sarah was 90 years old. Let's say the quizzer only gives you Abraham was 100. They're still wrong because they would have to give you the entire answer, which is and Sarah was 90 years old. Okay, so that's that. And the next one is questions requiring a specific number, such as give 9 or list 5, requires only that number in the response for the correct ruling, even though more choices are listed. So there are some like in 20s and 30s where you have a list like give 9, but in the book, the answers has more than 9, but your question is give 9. So as long as they haven't given you like the 9 or the 5, there's like, I think there's a question in 30 points which says list all the great like I ams. It has more than 5 in the book listed, but as long as they give you 5, the quizzer's answers 5, they're still correct, though the book has more than 5. The next one is answer portions may contain a word or words in brackets. The word in brackets are optional and not required. So you probably saw this in the book where they will give you the answer, but then they have something in the parentheses, right? So that's only like additional information. So the quizzers are not obligated to give you that information. Some do, some don't. Depends on how the quizzers learn. So as long as whatever is in the brackets is additional information, so they don't have to give you that information. Okay. Next one is question number 505. The parenthetical phrase contained in Matthew 1:23, which means God with us, is considered part of the answer and is required for correct ruling. 505. So question is, it's a quotation question. Quote the verse of Matthew's gospel, which tells of Jesus' supernatural birth. It's Matthew 1:23. Look, the virgin will conceive a child. She will give birth to a son, and they will call him Emmanuel, which means God is with us. So the parenthetical phrase contained in Matthew 1:23, which means God with us, is considered part of the answer and is required for a correct ruling. So if they don't, so the example is if they don't give you like call him Emmanuel, but I don't know, in NIV, I think it's in parentheses, but in NLT, it's not. So they still have to give you the meaning of the word Emmanuel, which means God is with us. Okay. So that's the rules for judging. So before we move on to scorekeeping, any questions on judging or any scenarios that you came across while you were judging that you had questions on?
During the match, the quizmaster itself, the person itself will know the answer, right? Like they turn towards the judge if they don't know what to do, kind of a thing.
Right. So, so whatever the quizmaster has, the same thing the judges have, the same questions and answers. So in some instances, if let's say the quizmaster is doubtful and if he didn't hear the quizzer, then he will go to the judges. And some of the quizmasters, like for all of the quotation questions, they will go to the judges. So they will not decide that the quizzer is correct until they discuss it with judges, and if judges are also in agreement.
You have 2 judges and 1 quizmaster?
Yes. So normally how they do judging is from each team, they will have a judge. So, and the judge for, let's say our team, right? And let's say you are the judge. So you will be judging on the other side of the team, like you will judge both the teams, but then you will be sitting on the other side and not with your team, because you can be
Conflict of interest.
with your team, right? So they switch the judges, and then you sit on opposite sides of the other team, so that you can be fair, like, with the teams. But yeah, it depends. Some quiz masters go to the judges more, some don't. So, but then it's good to like do your own judging of the questions and answers. Sometimes a quiz master can miss out and he might be wrong. So in those instances, you should be able to call a timeout and then tell the quiz master that he missed out, or he didn't didn't rule properly, if he made a mistake, if the quiz master made a mistake.
Got it.
Okay. Anything else? Any questions on judging? I mean, when you look at the rules, it feels like complicated, but when you do it, it's not so complicated. I mean, you will know, and then the quiz master will be there to help you out. They are more experienced, they know the rules, so it's not like that you have to do everything correctly. Even if you do something wrong, which is perfectly fine. They will be there. And as you keep doing, and you will also, learn, right? As you keep judging, then you will know the rules, and in no time you will be like experienced. Okay, so let's move on to scorekeeping. So before I go over that, let me pull out the sheet. Okay, so for scorekeeping, this is what you will be working with. You will be given a score sheet, and then I just put a sample here so that you can look at it. So basically, this is a score sheet, and this is what you will be kind of putting points for each of the team in the room. Okay, so there will be two teams, and one will be red, one will be green, and then each round will have 20 questions. Okay, and if you look at the top where it says question point value from 1 all the way through 20, so that is the point value of the questions. Let's say the quizmaster starts off the first question with question number 1 for 10 points. Then you will just put 10 underneath 1. So whatever the point value of the question that the quizmaster will speak out, that's what you would have to put underneath that column 1. And let's say question number 2 is 30 points, then you just put 30. If question number 3 is, let's say 20, you put 20. So you just kind of do a running score of the point value of the questions. So generally in a round, you will have 10 10-point questions, 3 30-point questions, and 7 20-point questions. So that is kind of the normal format for all of the rounds. So for each round, you'll have 20 questions. In those 20 questions, 10 are 10-point questions, 7 are 20-point questions, and 3 are 30-point questions. Okay. And then you have your two teams. Like if you look in these left side where you have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1, 2, 3, 4, those are like your two teams. And then in those rows, 1, 2, 3, 4, you would just write the quizzer name. So make sure you write there. Sometimes you have quizzers with the same first name. So make sure you write the whole name, like the first name and the last name. That way it's easier, like even when you give the score, like for them to tally and all that, it's not confusing. Okay. So you write down the first name, last name for both of the teams. And then you start, let's say the quizmaster starts off with question number 1 with 10 points. And let's say you have the first row is red and the second row is green team. And let's say for question number 1, let's say team green answered the first question, which is the below row, right? The second team. So if the green team answered it correctly, based on who answered it correctly from the green team, let's say from the green team, quizzer number 2 answered it correctly. So you will go to the underneath the second row where there is number 2, quizzer number 2, and then you will give that quizzer 10 points under the column 1. Okay. And that's how you identify. And then for the second question, let's say the red team in the top section. And quizzer number 1 answered question number 2. And he answered like a 20-point question. Then you will give them, and he answered it correctly. Then under this first section for row number 1, for question number 2, you will give that quizzer 20 points.
So I have a question.
Yeah,
Bhavani.
just, yeah.
So sorry.
No.
So I understand that, when a person answers from either team, you go to that person and award points for that person. But
Mhm.
what if, say, if the question is asked for team number 1, and then they don't answer and goes to team number 2, and someone answers from that team. So
So,
do we award full 10 points to the second team?
so good question. Glad you asked that. So let's say the quiz master, let's take the scenario what Justin brought up. So when the quiz master and asks the question, it's open to both the teams, right? Either of the teams can buzz in and give an answer. Let's say, so it's not, Justin, to your question, it's not just one team. When the quiz master asks the question, both the teams have 5 seconds to buzz in. So if none of the teams buzzed in for that question, so then none of the teams will get the points.
Okay. All right. So just a follow-up question. So you have 12, 20 questions, and if none of the team answers that question, would they count it as a question, or they would ask another question in its place?
So they won't ask in another question. They will just mark it as there's no response from either of the teams.
So if it's question number 9, there is no question number 9 anymore. They move on to 10.
Yes. Yep. So 9 will be like neither of the teams got it.
All right. So another follow-up question. So you said, so both the teams, or they can buzz in to answer a question. So if team 1 buzzes in and answers wrong, and even though team 2 might want to answer it, that question won't get passed from one team to the other, correct?
So there are specific conditions for that. So let's say team 1, let's say they did not interrupt the question, okay, and they buzzed in, and then they gave you the quizzer gave the wrong response. So then the quizzer gets a negative points, right? Let's say it was a 10-point value question, and the quizzer answers it wrong, then he will get a -5.
Right.
Then because it was not a interrupted question, it will not go to the other team.
Okay.
But so that's if they did not interrupt. But let's say one of the teams buzzed in and they interrupted the question, but the quizzer gave you a wrong response. They will still get a negative points based on the point value, but because they interrupted, it will go to the other team.
Got it. So only interrupted questions that are answered wrong will pass on. So if the person, the team that interrupted the question, the person answering interrupts and he completes the question fine, but he answers it wrong, just say that will never happen, but just a scenario. So even though the question is correct, since the answer is wrong, they will still pass on, or?
Yes, yeah, because they still interrupted the question.
The only interrupted questions that are answered wrong will be passed. And how many points are awarded if the second team answers correctly?
So they will get the full points, like whatever the point value. Let's say it was a 20-point question. So the first team which buzzed in and gave the wrong response will get the negative -10, right? So they'll get a -10, but the other team gets, if they answered it correctly, they will get the full 20 points.
Got it. Okay. Thanks.
Yeah. So that's that. And then if you see here after 20, that column, you will see overtime. And then you will see, is that SD? And then there's a BP, and then subtotal, total. BP is nothing but bonus points. Okay, so these bonus points are, let's take an example of a primary, like if you're keeping score for a primary team, so they only do 10 points. So primary team is a little bit easier because everything is 10 points. So for them, the bonus points are if they, let's say a quizzer answers 5 questions correctly, then they get a bonus points of 10. Whereas for juniors, it's 6 questions. That's the only difference between primary and juniors. For primary, they get bonus points if they answer 5 questions correctly. And we'll go, when we go through the rules, I have the rules too. So once a quizzer answers 5 questions correctly, they get a bonus points, and that's called a quiz out, which means they're out of the game. They have scored, they're out of the game, and then the team, their coach can, if they have a substitute, they will bring in another quizzer as a substitute. So when you're keeping score, you are tracking, right? For each of the quizzers, you will be tracking. So let's say, for example, you have quizzer 2 in red team, got 5 questions correct, and they get bonus points. So it's your responsibility as a scorekeeper, because the quiz master doesn't know the score, right? I mean, he will also track a little bit, but it's the responsibility of the scorekeeper to say, time point of order, quizzer number 2 has a quiz out. So that way, that quizzer can come out of the match, and then either they can substitute if they have a substitute, or if they don't have a substitute, then that place is vacant.
Okay, so so there'll be 2 scorers, like one for each team, or just one official?
Ideally,
scorer?
that's the ideal scenario. But normally, like, because we don't, they won't have like enough volunteers. It's going to be like one scorekeeper.
Yeah, okay.
But ideally, that's it's similar to judging. Even scorekeepers should be like from the opposite teams, and then you kind of keep score, because that's good, right? To have another checkpoint. But as you go into like district finals and regionals, there you will see like you will have 2 scorekeepers. In the practice matches, what happens is if they have enough volunteers, they will do that. The more volunteers they can get, they can have like 2 scorekeepers. But if not, there will be just like one scorekeeper.
Okay.
So that's one bonus points. Okay, let's go through the points, then we can talk more. Any questions on the sheet before we go into like what should a scorekeeper do?
So last week was my first week. I went to help with the team.
Mm.
So I was one of the scorers, but they didn't give me this sheet. I had to like take a paper and draw lines. And
Oh, really? Oh,
so can we expect this to like to be available?
they
Or
should, yeah. Like in JBQ, normally our the quiz master, normally they have all these sheets. So they will give you like these score sheets, and for the judges, their printouts and all that is handled by the quiz master and the league, whoever is on the league, our league coordinator. Yeah, they should be giving you. Yeah,
all right, sounds
I
good.
with TBQ, it's been because it was it was hard for them to find a coordinator, so they were scrambling, and finally John Riverson, like from Springfield, he took up the role to be the district coordinator, but then he has to come get everything together. But ideally, they should be providing you. Yeah.
Okay, okay, got it.
Okay, any questions? And then you see your timeouts, right? This is one more important thing. You'll see like for both of the teams, there is a timeout. If you have watched some of the matches, the coaches will call for a timeout, right, to talk to their team. So each team gets 3 timeouts. So altogether, it's 6 timeouts for including both the teams. So let's say you have green team, they used up their 3 timeouts. and then the red team used up their 3 timeouts. So it's the responsibility of the scorekeeper to keep track of that. So let's say the red team used up all their timeouts and then they call out for a timeout, then you have to say that, your timeouts are all done, like you don't have anything left to use. Okay, so even those the scorekeeper has to keep track. And then there's the next thing is the judge's ruling. This is something that we were talking about when we were going over the judging rules. So let's say the quizmaster marks a quizzer wrong for a certain team. That team, the coach of that team, can always call for a judge's ruling, like for a recounting kind of thing, how they ask for a recount. Similar way, the coach can ask for can appeal for a re-judgment of that question. And she can give her own reasons based on the question and all that. So each team gets only 2 judges ruling. They cannot go beyond 2. So even those, these don't happen a lot in practice matches, but then when you get to like district finals and regionals, it's it becomes very serious. So a lot of the coaches use these, but these are like each team gets 2 judges ruling. Okay, so even these, like you have to so normally what the best way to do it is when you're scoring, when let's say in the first section, team red took 1 timeout, just circle that 1 so that it's easier for you to keep track of each team's timeouts and judges ruling. Just kind of circle that out so you know how many there are. Sometimes coaches can ask like how many more timeouts they are left with and all that. Okay, all right. So some of the duties for scorekeeper is, of course, what we went through, like get the team names, get the quizzer full names, first name, last name, and also substitutes. So that's one thing I was going to show. Let's say in team 1, in the first section, the quizzer 1 answered like 5 questions or 6 questions, and they got a quiz out, and they are done. They are out of the game, and their team has a substitute, and the substitute comes in place of that quizzer. Then underneath that is another row, right? Underneath one, they're still sitting at the first position, but that new quizzer is a substitute to position number 1. So you would add the substitute's name in the second row and then keep track of his points. Okay, so that's what this means. Okay, so name of the team's quizzers and then substitutes. Then the scorekeeper should write in the point value, like how I was talking about in the top, like 1 to 20. You just have to write the point value of what question is being asked. For primary, it's going to be all 10s, but for juniors, you will have 10s, 20s, and 30s. Okay, and the third one is a correct response scores the full point value of the question. Let's say a quizzer answers the question correctly, they will get the full points. Let's say a quizzer answered a 30-point question, then they get the whole 30 points. If they answered a 20-point, they get the whole 20 points. If they answered a 10, they'll get the 10 points, okay? That's for correct response. For an incorrect response, deduct 1/2 the point value of the question. Let's say a quizzer buzzed in for a 20-point question, but then he answered it wrong, then you will subtract like 1/2 of the point value. So 1/2 of 20, which is 10. An incorrect response deducts 1/2 of the point value of the question. So you will give them like -10. Okay. If it's a 10-point, you will give them a -5, 1/2 of 10. If it's a 20-point question, you will give -10. If it's a 30-point question, then you will do -15 for the incorrect response. Okay, everybody with me?
Yep.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah.
One, a quizzer correctly responding to 6 questions receives it. So we talked about the bonus points. So for juniors, it's 6 questions, and for primary, it's 5 questions. The next one is a quizzer foul deducts 5 points from the quizzer score. So you will, I don't know if you have seen this, but the quiz master will call a foul on a quizzer. Let's say before even the quiz master starts the question, the quizzer will buzz in, for which he will get a foul. So it's like always a -5. So for fouls, it's always a -5, -5. Okay, so that's for the quizzer. Let's say a team foul deducts 5 points from the team score. You can have fouls at the quizzer level and also at the team level. So quizzer level is, let's say the quizzer buzzes in before even the quizmaster starts the question, so he gets a -5. But then sometimes, let's say the quizzer recognizes a quizzer from red team, but then the green team starts answering the question, which is a foul for the whole team at that point. So the green team will get a -5. So you will deduct it from the total score, give them a -5.
So this -5 for the foul, does it depend on the point or -5? Like,
-5 is for all, it doesn't depend on the point value of the question. It's a straight -5 for any foul, for any point value question. Okay. So those are false. The next one is, if the quizmaster should call a wrong question number or point value, the scorekeeper should immediately call it to the quizmaster's attention. Sometimes, it happens, like, let's say you are on question number 8, but then the quizmaster can say, oh, question number 10. So at that time, you can call a point of order and then correct the quizmaster, saying like, it's question number 8 is what you have to quiz on. Okay. And the next is the scorekeeper should keep record of timeouts, like how we talked, and inform the quizmaster if the team calls a 4th timeout, because every team gets only 3 timeouts. So if they call for a 4th one, then you just do a point of order and say you have used up all your timeouts. The next one is, the scorekeeper should immediately inform the quizmaster when a quizzer must leave the match. This happens in 2 scenarios. One is if the quizzer gets a quiz out, right? He's done, like he got a quiz out. So then you have to do a point of order and say, quizzer number 2 has a quiz out. So then he knows, like, you are informing the quiz master and the team and the quizzer that he got a quiz out. So he's done, he can step out of the game. So that's one scenario. And another scenario is, and this happens quite often, when a quizzer gets a backward quiz out. So a backward quiz out, so one quiz out is when he answers all the questions correctly. And the backward quiz out is, let's say, for example, a quizzer answers 3 questions not only in a row, but 3 questions wrong. That is called a backward quiz out. So a quizzer can only answer 3 questions wrong. If it's more than 3, when he answers a question wrong the 3rd time, it's called a backward quiz out. So at that point of the time, the quizzer needs to be out of the match. And that is what the scorekeeper has to call out, because you will keep track, right? Let's say question number 2, let's say there's a quizzer number 2. He answered question number 2 wrong, and then question number 5 wrong, and question number 10 wrong. At the 10th question, when he said it wrong, that's when you have to do like a point of order, stop, and call for a point of order and say, this quizzer number 2 has a backward quiz out. So the quizzer can, at any given point of time in a match or in a round, can only answer incorrectly 3 questions. The 3rd time, he's out of the match. Okay, so that's the rule for that. The next one is, at the conclusion of the match, the scorekeeper should compare the official score with that of the coaches, making corrections as the scorekeeper deems necessary. If upon the comparison of the scores, either coach desires to challenge its accuracy, they must immediately do so. When the coaches agree with the accuracy of the official scores, they will initial the official score sheet and the scores will be considered final. The quizmaster or the scorekeeper will announce the top 2 quizzers and the 1st and 2nd place teams, and the match will be officially closed by the quizmaster. So this rule is, let's say you're done with the round, right? Your first round, and then you tally up, you will calculate, and then you will do your final score for both the teams. And at the same time, the coaches for both the teams also will be keeping their own score. So at the end of the round, as a scorekeeper, it's your responsibility to call the coaches to come in, bring their score sheets, and then compare with yours and make sure like you are in tune. I mean, both of them are like on agreement that the scores are correct. If there is any discrepancy between yours and theirs, you will try to reconcile those scores and get an agreement from the coach that they're good with what you have on the sheet and have them initial your score sheet. Okay, so this has to be done for every round by the scorekeeper. From both the coaches, from both the teams, you will have the coaches come up, compare the scores. If they're good with if their score and your score matches, you're good. But sometimes, they will miss something or you might have missed something. So you just have to tally that and reconcile those things and agree, and then have them sign it. And then after both the coaches are good and after they initial your score sheet, you can announce the results. So normally, if you look in the score sheet in the bottom, I think the screenshot it's not showing, but in the bottom you'll have the highest first place individual quizzer, second place individual quizzer, and then you have the first place team and the second place team. So based on how the team does, you will put the first place team, second place team, write their team names, and then the team scores. And also you will recognize who was the highest quizzer, first top quizzer and the second highest quizzer. You write down their names and their points, and you'll just announce it to the teams. Who got what. And with that, the job of the scorekeeper ends.
What's overtime and SD on the score sheet?
So overtime is, let's say in a round we have 20 questions, right? And let's say there's a tie between both the teams. Let's say the team 1 scored 210 points and team 2 also scored 210 points. It happened. I've seen scenarios where it happened. So in that case, what happens is, because there's a tie and you have to break the tie. So what they do is they do like an overtime match after those 20 questions, where there are rules. The quizmaster will have the rules as to, they have to have, if it's a junior team, they have to ask 10 points, 20 points, and 30 points. So they will ask 3 questions, and the judges, when they get their sheets for judges, you will have those overtime questions also. And substitution questions also, you will have it in your sheet. So in that scenario, they will ask 3 questions again and do the overtime. And sometimes in that overtime, one team will win, one team will lose. Then you will announce the winner, and then whoever got the more points. But there are scenarios where even the overtime goes into a tie. And then they will, so they have like, I think they can do only 3 overtimes or something. So then they go to the next overtime. Then even that, even if the second overtime is a tie, then they go to the third one. So that is the overtime. So you track those overtimes. And then again, I think for overtime, you will give a new score sheet for those 3 questions, and you will have to score those.
What's SD?
SD, we have never used SD.
Okay.
I don't know what that SD, we've never used that SD. SD. Yeah,
so
no.
Overall, how many people will keep the score? Coach, scorekeeper, and the quizmaster also?
Quizmaster will not keep the score. So they are dependent. That's why the scorekeeper will be doing the score, and the coaches for their teams, they will be keeping the score, because they will also track, right? The coaches will be tracking like which quizzer answered which, and they will come up with their strategy for the team. So the coaches will keep their own score, but this is the scorekeeper who is with the quizmaster, like in the front, is the official scorekeeper.
Okay.
So basically 3 people at least will be kind of
Got it.
Score, yeah. But sometimes coaches, they miss out, like they have to, look at the kids, do their own strategy and keep the score. So sometimes coaches try to keep up with the score, but sometimes they can miss out on some questions. But whoever is upfront as a scorekeeper, they have to really pay attention because they are the official scorekeepers.
So ideally, there's a quiz master, scorekeeper, and 2 judges.
Judges, yeah. Okay. Before, I mean, we even used to have a timekeeper because somebody has to keep time, like that 30 seconds and all that. But now Quizmaster is doing that dual role, keeping the time and doing the Quizmaster. So we don't, but there were days where we had to do timekeeping also. But right now we don't. We're multitasking, yeah. Quizmaster is multitasking. So this is, I know we went overboard a lot of time, but I will send this out, and there is, I just simplified the rules. We have a national JBQ guidelines book. I can send out that link also. I mean, in future, for future purposes, if you want to really read through and then get more understanding, that will be helpful. But these I thought like for all of you parents, because you will be helping out with either judging or scorekeeping. I thought if we give you the important stuff, that will be helpful when you come to the meets and be an official. Okay, so if you have any questions, even if later on, if you have questions, you are more than welcome to ask me or Glossy, any of the coaches can ask us. So everybody's ready to be a judge and scorekeeper?
I think so.
Yes.
I know it's overwhelming, but trust me, you will be fine. I mean, as you do it, you will get a hang of it. Initially, when I first started doing it years ago, I was overwhelmed to like, these are too many rules, how do you track and all that. But when you do it practically, it's not so bad.
Yeah, I experienced it firsthand last week. So I
Last
just
year,
put
yeah.
into scoring last week because there was no official scorer, I guess.
Yeah.
So I started scoring, but I thought the scoring was only for our team. So I just scored for our team instead of both
Oh,
teams.
okay.
So
Yeah. So I'll send this out, and then future, if you have any questions, don't hesitate. You're free to ask us. Hope this was helpful. We thought we won't throw you under the bus. Give you some training, prepare you.
thank you. This is very helpful to answer a lot of questions that I had.
Glad it was helpful. Yeah. Right. So Glossy, you have your officials for next meet. But thank you though for volunteering, because we need volunteers. I mean, Justin, you experienced this last week, so it's all run by volunteers. So the
Yeah.
more parents get involved and volunteer, it makes the matches much smoother, and then it makes easier, like for all the league, whoever organizes, right? It's much easier on them too. They don't have to stress out. So yeah, and it's fun to watch the kids, and if you set aside all this and think about what they learn and the impact God's word does in kids' lives, that's immeasurable, right? We cannot quantify that. The God's they're learning.
Other way is also true. We get frustrated. Last week, I got frustrated because the
Yeah.
other team answering questions and ours did not.
Yeah. So yeah. So you think about, like, if every team can bring in volunteers, right? It's much easier, right? I mean, it's done. The matches are run smoothly, and so
Yeah.
It's very, very helpful. Yeah. Yeah. So thank you. Again, it took a lot of time, but we hope this is helpful, and I know it will be helpful for our church teams. And you can probably next time you guys can train the other parents. You don't need us. Yeah. So Radha, how is Akash feeling? This is his first time, right? Quizzing.
Yeah, he's doing okay. I think it's just his attention span. I think it's with the boys. It's different. With Amulya, I don't have to struggle, but with him, I have to push him.
Yeah, that's good. Everybody did good in the first match. I know I had to miss it. I was feeling so bad. Like, this is the first time I missed a match in all these years. But I know team, everybody did good. So. All right, Glassy, do you have anything you want to share?
No problem. Thank you. And for the next match, sign up, like maybe I'll send up that sign up sheet. So now we have 3 volunteers here. We need for primary and juniors, right? So
Yeah,
kids who are there in primary can do primary.
yeah.
That's only if you give me the scorecard. Otherwise, I'm not.
Oh,
I
JBQ,
think we can get some printouts and take it with us.
Of course, they will give you scorecard.
They
Like,
will.
I think
Yeah.
they will.
They will.
Because when you, if for JB, I don't know about TBQ, but like for JBQ, you'll sit in the front and you will be given a score sheet in front of you.
They'll give you pencils, everything.
Everything will be given.
Yeah.
I
JBQ
think
is
the last time I attended the final, yeah, it was well organized. Yeah.
TBQ.
Somehow I think Justin went for like the first one was a bad experience. Like
Yeah,
No, I'm
TBQ
just
is
kidding.
little, yeah. We scrambled like for the sheets, and even I did like on a plain sheet once. They didn't have any, and from next time, then I started taking all the printouts. But yeah, we'll have Joan take some sheets, I guess, from next time. Yeah. All right, thank you. We'll post this. We can post this in the WhatsApp group, these slides. So they'll be handy for you if you need to refer and take a look at those rules. But thank you so much. Thank you, everyone.
thank you.
Yep. Have a good
Thanks.
night. Yep. Bye.
Thank you, Bhavin.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
Bye-bye.